I'm live. Okay, good deal. Thank you. Glad you joined in. What an amazing thing. So here I am trying this for the third time. Let me do something real quick. This ought to help. Awesome. So a little bit of preparation always helps in what you're trying to do. Something I've never been known to do very well, but I can pull some stuff out of my ass like you wouldn't believe. In fact, much of this is going to be like that. But I think you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I'm writing another book. Beneath the Sacred Tree is the working title. I may change it. Could be the moss on a rolling stone or some shit. Who knows? I don't. I mean, I'm just putting words on paper right now, okay? Now, much of the time in the past, for me to put something on paper, there had to be something for me to be against. There had to be something for me to armchair quarterbacks, as it were, and identify certain thought processes and patterns and emotional states of being that contribute to the intellectual demise of passionate arguments concerning fucking whatever. You see it in the streets, and it's easy to armchair quarterback idiots marching in the street, especially if they got a dildo stuck to their head, big old fucking flopping penis and a rainbow. Jesus fuck, how could you not have fun with that? I was kind of wondering the other day, though, if a man's penis could make a sound like one of them old Tom and Jerry cartoons, or maybe something primal that would get the attraction of women, like a bull elk in the Rocky Mountains, something that whispered softly in their ears, "I have a credit card with no limit." But be that as it may, we can go on and discuss some of the other things. So I had an interview with Freya Aswin one time. She said, Brian, it all comes from the same well. And I had another old lady tell me one time, she said, these days I'd much rather be happy than right. I still see a bunch of stuff that leads our people, leads the very foundations of the spirituality off into a fucking worthless la la land. It really does nobody any good other than the person promoting it being more right than the next person. So I doubt if I will ever be able to Gandhi this bullshit into its own way of thinking. But what I can do is begin to address some of the things that I see that are crippling or handicapping our ability to move forward, us against them being one of them. And the first one that comes up is us against Christianity. They stole all of our ideas. All right, well, let's start with that right there. That breeds into the Lord's too heavily Christianized. Most people say that. They have no fucking clue what it means. They read it on a message board, looked good, made them feel important. Now they can talk shit at the next gathering. Hey, I've got this. The Lord's too heavily Christianized, and I know more than you do because I've made that statement. I don't have any way to back it up, but I think I can do it. There's the word ape is in there. Baldur's Reborn comes back. All right, let's get this straight right fucking now. So this is what I'm trying to put on paper. And ever since I got over COVID, I have the attention span of a field mouse in an orgy. I mean, they're everywhere. You know what I mean? It's just retarded. So focusing has become an issue. I may have to delve into some of Joe Rogan's brain boost mushrooms or some bullshit. Who knows? But as I look at things, I see, as I research this, and I look at these ancient spiritualities, and it begins to dawn on you that almost the entirety of the Old Testament is almost especially the flood myth, is a verbatim translation of Sumerian myth. Zoroaster also collected the books of law on a mountaintop amidst fire and lightning in the same manner that Moses did. You see elements of Egyptian spirituality and religion, Sumerian, Hittite, Babylonian. All of these things show up in the Old Testament as if nothing original could be contributed from their own ancient pagan spirituality when they were polytheistic. You get to the New Testament, and it starts off with the deity dying and being reborn. I'm going to outline Mithras, Dionysus, Buddha, and like 6 or 7 others. I'm going to outline Osiris, the death and rebirth of a deity being reborn for his people, and the prayers and the manner in which it was done. It's all strikingly similar. So we begin to look at that and we begin to adopt this idea that, hey, wait a minute, the Bible is a complete forgery. So if the Bible is a complete forgery, how can the Lord be too heavily Christianized? Do not the seeds of ancient faiths bleed through? In fact, so much of those seeds of ancient faiths bleed through. One came before the other. The native spirituality of Northern European people is far older than this forgery and compilation of books used to empower a church or a parallel form of government. A pathway where a regular man might rise to rank and power to sit in the courtrooms and be held as important as a king. For the rebirth of the sun to the world, the spring equinox, the return of life to the world, the winning of the sun over the deal. And there's some pictures and even addresses, this idea. There's some portraits of baby Jesus and Mother Mary as black. And I know that the black nationalists would love to enjoy that as they were really Africans. Well, no, they weren't, because I don't see much of that spirituality or mythology that has any depth or consideration or science and technology emerging from the dark part of that continent. They were in shadow. They were in the long dark before the sun rises. For the sun enters the world. Thor travels to the east every day, probably to fight away trolls, so the sun may rise and shine upon mankind, the warder of men. All of those things are going to be put into this book concerning denigrating this idea that the Lord is too heavily Christianized. Because when you look at Christianity and you begin to realize much of it is a forgery, but that enough of the spiritual foundation, hint, kernel, seed of truth, whatever the fuck you want to call it, has bled through, that people of all kinds find spiritual sustenance there. Is it because the one true God is real? Is it the power of their belief? And if it is just the power of their belief, why would it not work in our spirituality if we so deigned to believe instead of need to know, because it's the religion with homework? Which is it? Which is it going to be to secure the foundation and future of a spiritual tradition that we all hold to be very dear and sacred? Which will it be? Will we accept things on an intelligent, guided faith and spiritual tradition? Or will we continue to question because some dickhead over here wanted to feel more important than everybody else and decided to denigrate our spiritual tradition as he best saw it and still call himself, well, I understand the heathen worldview. Once again, I'm back to the point. Bryan said it all comes from the same well. Well, how do I process that? I don't. It's not my job. I'm going to present this body of evidence and work. And I think that you'll come to the same conclusions that I will. That the early church was far more influenced by the very manner in which our ancestors lived. That their faith and spirituality was a very aspect of their being, not something they did just on Sunday. That it changed the dynamics of much of everything that we call Christianity from where it started from. It did the same thing in Russia with the Russian Orthodox Church. It did the same thing in Central America with Catholics and their Day of the Dead. It did the same thing in the Philippines and their radical bullshit. It did the same thing everywhere it went. It morphed into something just a little bit different until you had the most virulent aspect of it in Islam pop up. It's not the way you die. Well, Christianity started out like that too. Then they realized they couldn't make any money that way. Hundreds of millions of people have lost their lives because of Christianity or Islam or Judaism. Hundreds of millions of people. So where do we begin? So when we look at that and we begin to ask ourselves, okay, How am I going to embrace this faith? Okay, I've already understand that I'm going to take the foundation out of Christianity and eliminate the perception of a corrupting influence on their part towards our stuff and reverse that so that we have a clear understanding of just how much our presence perverted what they considered to be a sound spiritual tradition. Perhaps that's why so many people still find security in a spiritual way of life that requires we do nothing to accept the very blessings of being alive. Well, when Thor goes to the east to fight trolls so the sun might rise and shine on us, do we not also get to accept those blessings of being alive because of the actions of the warder of men? Hmm. Perhaps there's a little bit more than just a gift for a gift. Perhaps there is an example and a desire for them, for us to join them on that journey, whatever that might look like. I think it's fairly well understood that there's a great body of knowledge that makes itself known and aware to us once we make the next transition of this existence as we go on beyond this mortal shell. So it's one of the things that Christianity does, that they denigrated in every other spiritual tradition, is it eliminated the fear of death as it magnified the fear of the afterlife and the underworld and everything else they wanted to call it and all of the traditions they wanted to tangle with. And that, if you look at it in a nutshell, is the thing that motivates most of mankind. Oh gosh, I don't want to die. Well, it might be your time. And yet we've installed such fear into that transition as to make it a terrifying thing. I don't know if it should be or not. But as people of a spiritual tradition and perhaps even faith, should we not approach that cornerstone of the existence, of the eternity of our existence, with just a little bit more courage than that? The halls of our ancestors seek to welcome us with open arms. I like to believe that. I like to believe that a lot. And perhaps today, the routine dreams that I have of my grandfathers and grandmothers and my father and others, my uncles that have passed on, those glimpses of them that I have in my dreams today to me are every bit as real as my interactions with them was when I was alive. The memories are so faint, the dreams are so powerful, so as to not be able to truly tell the difference. Perhaps this is what Odin meant when he said, "We'll find a refuge from grief in our wisdom." Is this the goal? I think that kind of thought process would empower a man to step forward boldly, bravely and gladly shall a prince shall go, and boldly till his day is come. All these passages of the Havamal, perhaps they came from somewhere else, perhaps they were taken and modified into something else. Who knows? But they provide sustenance for a spiritual yearning that most people have, we're not even aware that we need. We sustain ourselves on the false dichotomies of us versus them. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that are lined up to make money from us. You get right down to it, that's what all of it's about. How can I generate money off this individual? Well, let's give half the world a shot and see how sick it makes them and see if these pharmaceutical companies can make more money. Let's see how long it can keep people in power. Let's see how can it change power. All of these things. We never seem to question much of what we hear. We will deny one thing and take something else as the gospel truth. And we don't know either one to be true. We don't know if either one of them is true or valid. We don't understand if the argument is sound. More than likely, it isn't. My grandfather was a big fan. He said, ask the question, why would it be that way? Who said that? Why should I believe that? Well, what does that change about my life if I decide to get angry about it? See, what people fail to understand is when we begin to live a life like that, we're edging out the very foundational ideas of spirituality and faith that our ancient spiritual tradition is trying to impart to us today. Because we'd rather argue and be right about some innocuous bullshit that means a fucking hill of beans to most people. Oh, Hollywood's eating kids. Probably are. Better keep an eye on yours. Pay attention to the ones that are in your tribe. It's our responsibility as men. The failures of men because they are waiting on someone else to do it for them. Yeah. So we have a lot of change to do, a lot of work to do. I would submit to you that spending all our time arguing about other shit and whether or not the lore is too heavily Christianized or which came first, the chicken or the egg, they're robbing us of the vision of spirituality and faith. It's very difficult to embrace a spiritual idea when you're in the midst of an emotional, passionate, fucking being right session or wallowing in pity. Very difficult to do. There's no one to help me. Well, maybe there is. Why don't you ask and find out?